In the webtoon My Beloved Oppressor, our main leads, Annette and Heiner, are in a complicated relationship together. He only married her to enact revenge on her and her family, and she only married him because of her incredibly vapid personality. Heiner keeps Annette under lock and key, not letting her out of his sight while she desperately looks for any means of escape, via a divorce or a more deadly path. By all means, I should hate this trashy, over-the-top melodrama. I should hate how Annette declares her miseries to me. I should hate how out of line Heiner treats his wife. I should hate the tone of it with its seemingly over-the-top nature, brutality, and plot. I should hate it, but why don't I? This video is sponsored by Unveil. Unveil is a platform I trust fully with my artwork. They offer an engaging platform for all artists, writers, and creatives. You get to have a space to share your artwork, your writing, and even your world building. Unveil is one of my personal favorite platforms for organizing my stories into understandable categories like character art, traits, and even the world they live in. I also have noticed that unlike many other social media platforms, Unveil works so hard to get your artwork seen by other people just like you. I've also personally noticed that my artwork has so much of a longer shelf life with Unveil as well, with people having seen my art like months and even at this point like a year after I've posted it. I'd say one of the best features of Unveil is the never NFT and anti-AI policy they have in place, so you know the art that you're seeing is made by someone just like you. Unveil is the best platform around for sharing your characters, the worlds they live in, and so much more. The team at Unveil is dedicated to making their platform the best it can possibly be. With over 150,000 people on the platform, you are guaranteed to meet other like-minded artists and people just like you. Click the link in the description down below and you can join for free. And thank you so much to Unveil for sponsoring this video. I've had my eye on My Beloved Oppressor for about a year now. I remember it being proudly displayed on Webtoon's homepage, and I remember the subsequent frenzy from a lot of people. I even read the first few chapters on a live stream to see what all the fuss was about, and was left less than impressed. But I wanted to wait until a little more of the comic had been released before I made a video talking about it. In some of my earlier videos, I talk about comics that I'd really only read the first few chapters of, like Sharina, She's Hopeless, or Not Your Typical Reincarnation Story. I'd typically only do it if I was looking for multiple examples of a trope, but after a few people corrected me in my negative assumptions about seemingly good comics, I started to realize I really should be reading as much of these stories as possible in order to get a full perspective on the comic. Since My Beloved Oppressor only had a few chapters out, I bookmarked it and waited. The weeks and months went on, but something kept telling me to wait. And wait I did, until a few weeks ago. I was searching for a comic to read. Something bad. Something so terrible that it would make a great video, right? And while searching, I came back to My Beloved Oppressor. I felt like it would be much fairer to read it now since there were 55 chapters posted to Webtoon. If it still wasn't vibing with me after that long, then it probably is as bad as its first few obscene chapters. We begin our story after a civilian revolution against a monarchy that was terribly mistreating its citizens. Our protagonist, Annette Rosenberg, was part of the royal family by blood, and her husband, Heiner, was a commoner who rose through the ranks and led the rebellion against the monarchy. Annette's father, Dietrich Rosenberg, was murdered in front of her, and she was only spared because she was Heiner's wife. In the 2 years after the fall of the monarchy, Annette's mother commits suicide, and Annette was left alone, being bombarded by a media frenzy, putting all of the blame for the past on her shoulders. When Annette finally learns that Heiner never loved her, after just asking him for the truth, he tells her no. Fucking boomer-ass relationship. So Annette asks for a divorce, which he does not give her, wanting her to live forever unhappy at his side, because to Heiner and the people left after the revolution, Annette is a symbol of everything they had to suffer against. Her country's citizens were overlooked, and their everyday efforts were stolen by people who had more power and money than them. Annette was always draped in jewels and and lace, staying ignorant to what was really happening outside of her own little world. Her family had become powerful and rich off the backs of those who had to sacrifice everything and were given nothing in return. All the while, Annette, who had power, who could have helped others, did nothing. Annette does a song and dance for us about how sad and miserable and lonely she is because of her own ignorance. She never wanted to learn about the pain and suffering of the people who lived alongside her in her country. She never bothered to question why some people were angry about their lives while she wasn't. Annette only thought about herself. When I started reading the comic, I kind of hated her. I think about people I've met in my life who live a very privileged existence, never wanting for anything, never being told that they were insignificant by loved ones, never seeing the world for how awful it really could be. And for me, personally, I kind of despise them. I despise the fact that these Nepo babies have life so easy. I despise that these Nepo babies can ask for something and just get it. I despise that they have never worked for anything in their lives. Meanwhile, there are hundreds of thousands of people that work to break their backs day in and day out just to survive. Am I jealous? Yeah, definitely. I would love to just have everything handed to me. Now, normally when I'm reading a webtoon where the beautiful main character is a princess, but everyone hates her and is mean to her and makes her eat poor people food, I tend to get increasingly frustrated when the character, usually with some level of autonomy over their own movements and financial situation, just sticks around and keeps getting treated absolutely horribly. Now, I understand there are nuances to that, and that having a place to go, funds to survive, and the courage to actually leave an abusive relationship are big factors that could realistically influence a person not to do that. But oftentimes, webtoons in this genre just give their characters absolutely no reason not to just leave. One of the most prominent examples of this is the comic When the Mad Emperor Holds Me, where we start with our main lead Celeste being beaten by her half-brother Raph. When she doesn't, I don't know, cry or better yet beg, he says he's just going to exile her, but not before cutting her feet off. Then he leaves the building with her unattended in the middle of the forest, and Celeste just stays there. She's about to be exiled anyways, and she doesn't, I don't know, use her feet to run away. It really does wonders for turning me against a lead when they don't even try to help themselves. So while I was reading My Beloved Oppressor, I couldn't help but think of Celeste. Why didn't Annette just leave? But that thought was squashed almost immediately within the first few chapters. Annette has to lie to sneak out of the house that her and Heiner share, and she makes an attempt to go to a beach a few hours away. But we see that once she leaves the house, everyone from maids to taxi drivers to train operators notify Heiner of her actions. She's well known and well hated in the community, so of course she'd be recognized, making any means of escape without some sort of aid nearly impossible. So Heiner follows Annette to the beach in order to bring her back home. While staring into the ocean, Annette seems to come to a realization that she doesn't want to be alive anymore. She tries to walk into the ocean before being stopped by Heiner, who had tailed her from their hometown to the beach. This moment is the start of a very unfortunate series of events with Annette in the story. After Annette and Heiner travel back home, Annette has finally made up her mind about what to do with her future. She begins to make plans to commit suicide, and one of the first things she does is sell the rest of her once treasured jewelry that Heiner had given her, with the goal of leaving the money she had gained from it to charity. While at the jeweler's, Annette thinks to herself that Heiner knew I liked shiny things, which while I was reading, I personally found very telling of the type of person she was and how she led her life as a shallow and empty individual. She tells us that she wanted the last of it to be sold off because when she died, she didn't want those pieces to be known as jewelry that belonged to Rosenberg's daughter. As she's leaving the store where she sold her jewelry, a man with a deep-seated grudge against her father shoots her. After being taken to the hospital, we learn that Annette was pregnant with Heiner's child, and because of the shooting, she lost the baby. When Heiner learns of this, we start to get a sense that his feelings of hatred for her are a little more complicated than we had originally thought. He tells her that if she wanted a baby, they could adopt one. But Annette yells at him that it was better for the unborn child because they never would have lived in a good home. Because he's made her so miserable and treated her so poorly, her losing the baby was actually a blessing in disguise in her opinion. Annette, having lost the child, only further pushes her inside of her own mind, wondering why on earth something like this could have happened. Right. It was all because of my own greed. Whether it was because of loneliness or desperation, or simply because I didn't want to lose him. A child born that way would have faced a cold, harsh world. Because of my, Annette Rosenberg's blood. This is right. The child wasn't meant to be born into this world. It's just one of the many haunting thoughts we see from the main characters as the story continues. Annette gets released from the hospital and meets the sister of the man who shot her, Catherine. Annette feels compelled to meet with Catherine, who begged and pleaded for Annette to listen to her while she was being discharged. While Heiner doesn't think it's a great idea, he allows Annette to meet with Catherine, but only if she takes a dagger to protect herself in case anything goes wrong. It is here that Annette learns that she and Catherine actually have met once before. A few years prior, her brother had joined the revolutionary forces and was captured and tortured by Dietrich Rosenberg into admitting he was a rebel. While he was set to go to trial, it wasn't a fair one, and he was set to be executed the next day. The night before, however, Annette had a piano recital where Catherine tried to beg for reconsideration of her brother's life. While Annette watched Catherine at the gates of her house be dragged away while she pleaded for her brother's retrial, Annette watches, and when asked what she's looking at, she responds with, "Oh, nothing. Just someone who didn't agree with the ruling was making a commotion." It's here that Annette begins to realize she had been ignorant. She had been keeping her head turned and ignoring the world around her. She tells us that, "I never tried to understand. I never thought I needed to understand. It was all unknown to me, and I didn't think we shared anything." While I don't think Annette is responsible for the sins of her parents, I do feel she had an obligation, that night at least, not to be so self-centered. She thinks to herself that she had many choices in her life to make better decisions, but she never did so because she was scared or selfish. It's this line of thinking that sends her into a bit of a spiral. Remember that knife that Heiner had given Annette in case she needed to protect herself from Catherine? Well, it wasn't just a one-off scene to show us that Heiner actually cares about her. It was a Chekhov's gun that comes back in a big way. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that there would be mentions of suicide, but I just wanted to bring it up once more before we get into the really and truly nitty-gritty. After meeting Catherine, Annette uses the dagger to try to take her own life for a second time. While Heiner does find her, her outlook is not so great. He looks around her room and finds a few things, such as the money she had gotten from selling her jewels to be donated to others once she was gone, and comes to the realization that Annette was really trying to kill herself. Maybe he had fooled himself into thinking she was just being irresponsible the last time, wandering too far into the ocean, but here there is proof he cannot deny. Heiner feels extremely guilty for having caused such emotional distress towards Annette and begs for her to stay alive. He says he hasn't resolved anything between them, but he wishes for her to stay by his side. This was the point where I really started to think that something was off about Heiner. At first, he was just shown to be a big scary war guy that really didn't want Annette to be happy. But when I watched and read his internal monologue regarding his guilt towards pushing Annette to the brink of death, I found myself wholly intrigued. It seemed there was a lot more to him than just what met the eye, and I had been tricked into believing that there was nothing to him outside of what was being shown to me. I had been just as vapid about Heiner as Annette had been. When Annette finally wakes up, Heiner is elated, but then they both realize how miserable they truly are. With Annette realizing she didn't die and weeping with despair, and Heiner seeing the true amount of damage he had caused, Annette clearly disassociates from this point forward. Heiner lies to himself that things are getting better with them, and he ignores all of the future warning signs from Annette and finds her once again trying to kill herself. It's here that Heiner begs for Annette to stay alive, saying he'll divorce her as long as she promises to keep herself alive. Annette kind of agrees, and the pair finally divorce. I'm not gonna lie, it is a brutal read at times, but I feel like the tone is completely necessary in order to show us the true weight of what each of the characters feel. I feel Annette's pain. I feel her struggling. I have come to understand why she is doing the things she is doing. It's Heiner I'm more confused about at this point. Why didn't he let her go when she seemingly made him so angry? It's at chapter 21 we finally get a clearer picture of what's happening inside of Heiner's mind, and it's just as brutal as what we've been seeing. Heiner, orphaned at a young age, was taken by Annette's family to a training island for his country. It was here that he was subject to the will of Dietrich Rosenberg, who essentially groomed these kids into giving up their lives for him and their country's needs. because they would become spies for their country if they survived the abuse of the training. Heiner had to do everything in his power in order to live, which included killing his comrades. At the end of each year, a select few would be chosen by Dietrich Rosenberg to visit his home for a meal. Here, Heiner sees a painting of Saintess Marianne and thinks to himself that it's no wonder people believe in a god when such a painting can captivate him. Before returning back to the camp, he overhears a song being played on the piano. When he starts to look for who is playing it, he comes across Annette. He sees her and starts to think to himself how similar she is to the painting. She plays the song on the piano and he becomes completely entrenched in listening. Heiner explains that at one point of his life he was given a music box that played the exact tune he had listened to, and while music never helped him survive in life, he still had a soft spot for it. After nearly being caught by Annette for stepping on a branch alerting her to his presence, Heiner runs away, telling us that this chance encounter was a turning point in his life. Heiner now had something he wanted to do in life, and that was get into Dietrich Rosenberg's good graces in order to be invited back to the house and hear Annette play the piano. Heiner has a reason to live, and that reason is Annette. He strives to be the best, to survive, to endure the torture her father inflicted for a small chance he can hear her play again. He works himself to the point of repeated injury just for a chance to see Annette. He thinks about how lowly and inhuman he is in comparison to Annette. And as the years continue and he gets to hear her play more and more, his fixation becomes an unhealthy obsession. Heiner begins to be sent out on many missions on orders from Dietrich Rosenberg. He does them all willingly and eagerly in order to prove to himself he can be a good match for Annette. If he can rise in ranks and prove he is worthy, maybe he will have a shot at being with her someday. On his last mission for Dietrich Rosenberg, he and his group are captured by enemy forces. While in captivity, Heiner is wounded beyond repair, starved, brutalized, and tortured until he gives up information to their enemy. Heiner, however, never falters, only thinking of Annette. While his comrades give in to the torture, Heiner remains resilient, convincing himself that Annette will someday love him, that Annette will pity him, that Annette will sympathize with him. He thinks of her and only her. His passion, now turned into obsession, is the only thing that keeps him alive. Thinking to himself that there is something for him to live for, he puts her on a pedestal, and when he does escape and return to her, she doesn't live up to those expectations. Upon returning home and wondering why no one ever came to help him or his friends while being a prisoner of war, Annette's father says, "Why waste time on nothing?" Heiner thinks to himself, this is fine. After all, Annette will be there for him. Annette will see his pain. Annette will sympathize with him. But when he finally meets Annette, seeing her draped in jewels and lace, he begins to tell her his feelings, and she ignores him and walks to her father, cutting him off. Disgusted by her not having lived up to his expectations, he vows to make her as miserable as he is. Why should she get to live a happy life when he was abused, forgotten, and trampled over for her benefit? After getting to take a proper look into Heiner's past and character, I was pretty much set. This wasn't meant to be a torture-porn romance. This was meant to be a character study of Annette and Heiner. Did I agree with each of the actions the characters took? Absolutely not. But did I sympathize with them on a basic human level? Yeah. After moving out, Annette is offered a place to live by Catherine, and together with Catherine's husband, they all fall into a nice routine together, living out somewhat peaceful days together until their country goes to war. When their ally gets invaded, they have no other choice but to join with them and enter a war against enemy forces. As Annette's peaceful few months come to an end, she realizes that she is again at a crossroad at her life. She could choose to sit back and do nothing about the situation, or she could act. And so Annette makes the tough choice to become a nurse on the front lines of the battlefield, searching for a way to right her past wrongs, as well as searching for a reason to live. I gotta admit, I love war stories. I am continuously intrigued with the aspect of how it affects each and every one of us, and how members of society step up in order to protect what they cherish. The horrors of war truly capture my attention in an instant. Blame Anastasia, or blame Anne of Green Gables 3, but I like learning about the mistakes of our past. So when My Beloved Oppressor took a turn towards the war aspect, I was really interested. My Beloved Oppressor had been building up to a conflict the entire time, I just hadn't noticed it because I was so focused on the character drama. There were repeated mentions of other countries and conflicts, but I thought that I didn't need to pay attention to them because the character drama was what was important, right? It's crazy because whether I liked it or not, I had been put in Annette's place once again without even realizing, ignoring other and greater issues for Annette's own personal turmoil. Once war was officially announced, there wasn't much you could do to ignore it because whether you liked it or not, there were greater and more important issues at hand. I really think the way the comic started out is important to the greater story. I think it's important to show the brutal tone so that we as readers would take the later subject matter just as seriously as the beginning incidents. Something I've noticed a lot in some recent comics is the war maniac, war hound, war hero, war guy trope and how everyone is afraid of him, but we're never shown how that has affected those who were in the aforementioned war, and we're also never shown how the war guy has coped with the mass amounts of murder they have had to commit. The war is seen as a joke and the war guy is its sexy punchline. But in this comic, we live through the war with Annette and Heiner. We see their individual perspectives and we learn just how devastating war can be from any point of view. War isn't something to be taken lightly. It's devastating, it's traumatizing, it's ruthless and echoes its horrors for generations to come. War changes people and takes so much from those who are affected by it. So when it's used as an offhand characteristic of a trashy male lead, I can't help but be a little put off. But here, it's one of the main conflicts of the drama, and because of that, it is treated with the proper care it needs in order to get through to its readers. I became enveloped in the drama of My Beloved Oppressor and genuinely couldn't stop reading. I was insatiable. I watched the ads in order to read every chapter that was available to me, and when that wasn't enough, I found the original novel and picked up where the comic left off and finished it. And I have to say, the emotions I was left with were bittersweet and tumultuous. Even now, weeks after I finished the book, I am left thinking about the very emotions and journey I had gone through with the characters. It was, dare I say, very well written. So why does this comic have such a low rating and seem to be so widely despised amongst readers? Honestly, I really do understand why people would be turned away from it upon first glance. It was incredibly brutal to get into, and I really thought it was going to be just another angst red flag filled romance. The tone is incredibly dark, but not without good reason. When I try to think about if I would change anything in the story, I genuinely don't think I would. Things happen for reasons that later come into play with the story. If we were to leave out some of the context, I think we as readers would be lost as to why characters did certain things and acted in certain ways. A big argument for it is the name itself, and since I read the novel's ending, I will say there is an incredibly valid and interesting reason for My Beloved Oppressor being named My Beloved Oppressor. I've seen a lot of people point out that the name is an admission of its trashy nature, but it's a twist I really don't want to give away in this video because it puts the entire comic into a new perspective. What makes Heiner's barbaric actions towards Annette any different than Matthias from Cry or Better Yet Beg or Lawrence from How Dare You might be wondering to yourself? Well, the author is incredibly upfront with the fact that Heiner's actions are not good, not justified, and should not be repeated. Heiner expresses guilt and longs to change the way he is, whereas Lawrence and Matthias don't, and their actions are glamorized because the female lead loves them anyways. Another pretty big reason a lot of people have towards disliking My Beloved Oppressor is that while it's label drama, you can still find it in the romance section, leading a lot of readers to think that the pair will end up together in the end. Well, I can't say that comic won't go in a different direction. In the novel, they actually don't end up together. Annette tells us that a romance between them would be impossible given their incredibly messed up history multiple times. The author, knowing the thought process of readers, lets us know under no uncertain terms that romance won't be rekindled. I think this aspect also sets them apart from the aforementioned comics. They are not the same. While I understand this might not be a story for everyone, especially with the subject matter and tone, I really do think that it should be given a chance. My Beloved Beloved Oppressor might surprise you. With the incredible character soliloquies Heiner gives to us and the personal turmoil Annette suffers through and the horrors of war, My Beloved Oppressor has been an absolutely gripping read and will be one I will think about long after I finished reading. Thank you so much to my patrons, Izuma, Roses in Water, Lady Alpossum, Nowhere to Xander, Icy, TJ, Char, Mira, Meep Cubed, Aleheart, Bean Dork, Anna the Giant, Abigail, Selena BB, Claudia E. Gomez, Blue Vamp Countess, Constellation, Pink Naya, Mies Coles Punk, Squidius, Kathleen O'Neill, Nevius Fox, Punchy McPuncherson, The Eek, and Jocelyn Hertel. If you would also like early access to my videos as well as having your name read aloud and getting to see extra video goodies, you can join my Patreon for only $2 a month. Don't forget to check out Unveil on your way out as well. Also, I just wanted to say, we hit 100,000 people on this channel, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. I am kind of floored that 100,000 of you are here to watch my silly little videos and hear my opinion. It's crazy, honestly. I'm so happy that all of you have decided to join me. I just wanted to say thank you. As corny as it sounds, I really do want to just continue to keep making the content you guys all love and appreciate. Thank you. I'm so happy you decided to join me.